Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Going to be talking a little bit more about sort of what I'm starting to notice, and this could be interpreted as a positive or negative. We are starting to see more often newer versions of cards that are on the reserve list. Now, the reserve list, for those of you who are not aware, who are newer to Magic, it is a set of cards, all of them rares, from Alpha going up to Exodus, but not past, pretty much meaning that you cannot reprint these cards, or at least you cannot reprint them in a way that would increase circulation. We've seen them get around this before, where they had a Judge promo for Wheel of Fortune, so they do break their own rules. It just never really matters enough to affect the market, which is really the only reason why you would want to preserve the reserve list, is so that the players who have invested in Magic cards for a long time could retain that value. I have mixed feelings about the reserve list. I think that if you view it as a problem, it's something that should have been addressed a long time ago, but it's at the point now where we've kind of let it go on for too long. It's kind of like a monster that they've created. Getting rid of it now would feel kind of pointless, because you've seen their attempts to get around it. Removing the reserve list and reprinting these cards would unleash Pandora's box. The stability of paper Magic has been put into question this year, not just because of the lockdowns, but because of the success with the digital platform Magic Arena. If the growing popularity of Magic Arena, if you see that more on Twitch live streams, it's one of the more popular streamed games, and if a lot of their revenue does come from that source, what kind of costs are they going to sacrifice to prioritize Magic Arena, and will those costs affect paper Magic? Because keep in mind, a digital platform, there's no real cost of production. You don't really need a physical copy of the game. It's just something you can download. So there is no cost of production outside of your developer. It's not like you have to go to a printer. It's not like you have to depend on a printer. And those were some big concerns at the start of the year. What exactly could you get from the printer? Some of these printers closed down just simply because you can't really have a warehouse filled with workers when you have a deadly virus that could kill everybody. And whatever you think about the virus, it was a legitimate concern going back in March and the time since then. So if something like that could happen again, who knows how often? They're going to depend on their digital platform. However, I do think with the actions that they've taken, and I see more and more of these cards, Wheel of Misfortune, Jeweled Lotus, we're seeing more of these cards that are in many ways similar to the reserve list cards that we've known, but they're quite clearly not the same exact card. They have a weakness. Either they're more expensive, or the ability just isn't quite as good. We've seen this with Time Twister, we've seen this with Yawgmoth's Will, and a lot of ways that you can get around the reserve list. It's not like they haven't been doing it before. Going back to Time Spiral, we've had the Magus cards for a while now, and a lot of what the Magus cards are, they're just weaker versions of better cards. So we have Magus of the Wheel, we have Magus of the Will, we have Magus of the Moat, we have Magus of the Candelabra, creatures with abilities that are very similar to those reserve list cards. And it's easy to make them because they're not functionally the same card. They're different enough so that you're not going to piss off the reserve list investors. And I don't know if I should call them investors, but you know what I mean. Wheel of Misfortune is different enough in that it's not going to be everybody discard their hand and then draw a new 7. Some players are not going to do that. At least one person isn't. And it also involves damage. So it is different enough so that it's not a complete replacement. If you just made another red sorcery for 3 mana, it was the same exact mana cost, and it just said everybody discards their hands and then draw 7 cards, you'd have a problem because you can't really do that. They made that promise along with the reserve list that they wouldn't just make a card that is a complete replacement, because it's not so much the card itself that's valuable. It's the fact that it's the only card that does that specific thing and has that specific cost. So if you were to make simply just another Wheel of Fortune, it just wouldn't be called Wheel of Fortune. You're still going to have a problem. So you have Reforge the Soul. You have cards now that are just the same thing, they're just more expensive. So you can still do your reserve list thing, you just have to spend more mana to do it. The difference with Jeweled Lotus is that it's not Black Lotus, you can't spend that mana on just anything, even though it's still powerful to play a 0-cost artifact and sack it for 3 mana. What many people consider to be the best card in the game is still going to be the best card in the game. And I've seen this trend more and more often in the past few years. We either get cards that are very similar they're newer replacements, or they're similar enough in ability to where it wouldn't make sense for them to act on the reserve list now. So for all of the people who are just entering the discussion about whether or not we should have a reserve list, I think all signs are pointing to no, we're not going to do anything about it. There's no reason to do anything about it. The only reason why you would do anything about it is if Legacy became a bigger deal, and even then, we're only really talking about should dual lands be taken off the reserve list. What could happen is very much cyclical, where fewer and fewer people play Legacy, fewer and fewer people, next to nobody plays Vintage except for people online. We could have a future where even fewer people are playing Legacy, where Modern could be the new Legacy. I've heard those theories, where you would just kind of add a new format and then shift, and then slowly over time, the oldest format becomes obsolete because a lot of people are getting priced out. They can't really play a format if they can't afford to. And one of the positives about Magic Arena is that it seems like new formats are easier to introduce. There's a lot more structure and organization to Arena compared to Magic Online. It's more user-friendly. The downside with Paper Magic is that you can't really influence formats as easily. People are going to end up doing what feels right to them. So even if you have a new product intended for a new format, like with Brawl and the Brawl decks, you're still going to see people that make the 100 card Commander decks. With Magic Arena, you just have a Brawl format and the players have to play Brawl decks. So they have more control over what the players do. They have more control over that with a digital platform. Whatever money you spend on a digital platform, it's not like you own anything. So they have control over your cards too. Paper Magic could easily just become a relic, something that they treat more as like a tradition. Although everybody here, we know how much we like playing this game. I don't think we could anticipate that Magic Arena would grow to the size that it is. I think we were all kind of expecting it to fail. But they found the right blend of Magic Duels. You could play Standard, you could play newer formats, and it didn't quite have that cheap feel that Magic Duels did. And with popularity, you grow your player base. When you grow your player base, people prioritize that. Maybe they don't spend that much money on Paper Magic. This was always an easy thing to address with Magic Online because the cost was astronomical. If you wanted to play both, you would usually just go with Paper Magic because at least you own the physical cards. And while it is, yes, cheaper on Magic Online, it's not really a trivial amount of money. You're still going to be spending a decent amount just to make a playable deck. And the people I see who do that the most are just the streamers, the people who have an income source that can support that. The real dangerous thing here about Magic Arena is the possibility of Wizards of the Coast shifting their priorities. Wizards, I don't think, will address the reserve list anytime soon. I don't think they're even thinking about it, because why would you care about Paper Magic when it's not your main source of revenue? When the kind of business you're running is not going to be involving the kind of costs where you're going to a printer, why would you go to a printer again? Why would you prioritize that? It's not something I think we have to worry about immediately. This could be something 5 to 10 years down the road, but what we've seen in the market is just an oversaturation of product that's going to be harder and harder to sell, and people have interpreted that as, the game's doing really well, guys, we have all this awesome product, but you can make a lot of products if fewer people are buying them. The stores that sell your product are going to have to eat that cost. And if this is a trend that continues, you're going to see fewer and fewer game stores. You're going to see game stores close down for good. One of my favorite game stores had to close down because of the lockdowns. And while that's not fair to blame them for the lockdowns, it doesn't really help when they have an oversaturation of product to sell that doesn't really have the interest of the consumer. That's just excess, and they're not going to keep an old product on the shelf if they can't sell it. They're going to discount it, and they're going to sell it to try to break even at least. So yes, the reserve list is probably safe, but I don't even know if that's a good thing. I don't know if that's an indication of the stability that the game currently has, or the instability. We don't know, so it could really be either explanation. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think about the future of the game, the future of the reserve list, and the relationship between the good times and the bad times. I'm Void here, signing off. Have a wonderful day.